Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are just tuning in here for the first time, we just finished talking about a bunch of NFL topics, the most recent free agent signings, including Jalen Johnson, a massive contract to stay with the Bears, the All-Pro corner. In the earlier segment, we broke down the safety market a little bit, talked about what they were going at, what expected prices were for that, and what that means for the safety market coming up in the future of the NFL. And in the first segment, we went over the Bills destroying their roster to get under the cap and what that does for their Super Bowl chances and if they can rebound from it. But in this fourth segment, we are going to transition into the NBA for a little bit. We are going to talk about some online discourse I've been seeing a lot in the past couple days, dealing with people going back and watching games from the 80's and 90's in the NBA, and going in on some of those players. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. Your message will pop up on the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you wanted to say, what you wanted to talk about, for everyone to see here watching the stream. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. We appreciate anybody who donates. We appreciate all you guys for tuning in and listening. But like I was saying, there's been really interesting... I don't want to call it a debate because there's only really been one consensus that I've been seeing on the internet. I haven't really been seeing the other side as much. I guess discourse is the best way to put it. That's how I've put it here in our little headline. Talking about the NBA in the late 80's and 90's, the Jordan era. People always talk about how the defense over there was incredible. And there's always the debate between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. And people have been going back, I guess, for the first time. I'm guilty too. I never have gone back and watched these guys play. So, seeing this discussion, it's the first time that I've ever gone back and watched these games as well. And these games are all over YouTube. You can just kind of pull them up and watch them. And I want to preface this with, there's plenty of examples of great basketball, right? You've seen highlights. You know these guys make great plays. They're still great NBA players. But the discourse surrounding this, and when you go back and watch the film, it's different. When I hadn't realized how truly different it was. You always hear people say when they're in the GOAT debate and no one's making a budge, making any headway on either side, that it was just a different game back then. It's a different game now. You can't compare the eras. And in my mind, I was always like, yeah, I guess you're right. 3-point shooting wasn't that big a deal. That was something that Curry really brought to the league. But, LeBron was around before the explosion of 3-point shooting. It was still there. But could it really have been that different? I mean, Jordan played into the 2000s, He played in my lifetime. It can't be that different. But and like I said, I hadn't gone back and watched this tape before. But going back and tuning into it, seeing what these games looked like, it really is a different game. And there's some bad compared to today's game, and there's some good, First of all, the defense, that's so highly touted there. It's not that crazy. I mean, a lot of that crazy defense, the Bad Boys Pistons with the and Michael Jordan, they're just tackling each other sometimes. There's some straight up illegal defense. You can go back and watch some clips of them just crashing into each other or holding each other or again tackling. Just not really defense, more it's illegal defense back then. And it's not just those games, but those are the big thing you watch for the defense. I went back and watched Pistons Bulls series back then. And then the other thing is, we talk about spacing in the NBA today and how it was so much more packed in the paint. And in my brain, I was always like, yeah, it was obviously more packed in the paint. There weren't that many great shooters. They weren't extending them out to the 3-point arc as much. Still a little bit of spacing. But when we watch these games, they're setting their defense with like three guys inside the paint, like a traditional. When you're being taught the fundamentals of basketball, and you have your center planted in the middle of the paint. You've got your two low guys at the block. The block at the bottom of the paint, and then you put your two wings not at the free throw line, but not at the 3-point line, but at the corners of the free throw line. And they were just kind of camped there in that little box a lot of the times from what I was seeing. And they wouldn't go out and they wouldn't challenge shooters. And that's not to say that they didn't at all, but they would just kind of let them chill out in the mid-range. They would let them chill out behind the arc because they weren't a huge threat to shoot, but they would let them get a lot closer than I would have expected. There was a lot more separation because they were really scared of, I guess, the drives. They were not letting people drive. Like, you go through that paint was bodies. There was no space for you to go through. That is true. But that's because no one was guarding shooters. And it's not like they couldn't shoot back in the day. You still had some really good shooters, not like compared to today's game shooters. No one was shooting 40% from 3 consistently back then. Maybe one or two guys, but mid-range, you put them at the elbow. there's just open shots all the time. Good ball movement would get someone open like that every single game. It was really interesting to watch. And I understand that it's a different era, but it just... And maybe I'm biased, because the only basketball that I have really watched before this week, is, modern era basketball with 3-point shooting and uptight man-to-man defense, zone defense, this high-energy defense and stuff when it's good, not giving people space to shoot. There was just a lot more space to get your shot up, was my takeaway. And that's not to say that these players are bad. Again, I don't want this to be the takeaway, because Jordan still was incredible. I think, regardless of what you see on that tape, and I think Jordan could still play in today's NBA. I think he would still be a top 10 player in today's NBA. Definitely, probably top 5. He is incredible. He's the second best player of all time. But it's not the same level of defense. It's not that mythical defense that that I've been hearing about my entire life. It's not that same level of, oh my goodness, defense nowadays is so weak. It's just different. The league really was a different game back then. And I hadn't quite realized that. That's my main takeaway from this discourse. A lot of people are going back and they're looking at Jordan and they're saying, oh, he had no left hand. And it is funny to watch that sometimes. He would just kind of sit there, not really pressured. He wasn't really in the position to shoot, so it was fine, but he was just sitting there dribbling with his right, and really high dribbles too. There were a couple clips I was watching, and he just wouldn't go left at all. They were wide open to the left, and he wouldn't do it. Just something interesting. I thought it was really cool to watch, honestly. I'm glad that this discussion is happening, because we kind of just accept how things are a lot of times, and we don't go back and watch it. And I'm guilty of that all the time. I talk about these people that I just straight up never watched. I talk about them every once in a while, and I'm like, yeah, they were great. And I haven't seen them myself. I've seen highlights maybe, but I haven't seen full games. And it's something I encourage people to do. It's something that I should be doing more often, something I will do more often, is go back and watch these older clips, because it's fascinating to see how a sport evolves. That's one of my favorite things about sports. It's not just stagnant. 200 years from now, if we're still playing the same sports that we are today, people are going to look back at today's era, and they're going to remember guys like Tom Brady, and they're going to be like, this guy was your GOAT? He was a statue in the pocket. What, he won 6 Super Bowls? Who was he playing against? You know, because sports evolve. That's what happens. People get better. They gamify it, you know? They figure out the system. They cheat it. People train their bodies in such ways that they are perfectly built for these sports. It's really, really cool and interesting to see how games and sports evolve. It's not just the NBA, it's everything. You know? So, the modern era, in general, and it's not always true, but in general, the modern players are usually more skilled. And that's how it's always going to be. You're always going to have old heads. We're going to be old heads one day. We're going to be like, LeBron was so much better than whoever comes up and challenges him next, you know? But it's super cool to go back and watch these things. And now that the internet is out there, you can. You weren't able to do that back in the day. You just had to take people's words for it. So I highly encourage everyone, if you're interested in this stuff and you really want to go back and have a true opinion on this stuff, go back and watch it. It's not that long to go watch. You don't have to watch everything. Go watch like a handful of games. Go watch one series, you know? It's really cool. I highly recommend to go do that. But anyway, thank you everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Tomorrow, we are going to finish off the week. It's going to be a big show. Tune in then, same time, same place. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the